Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm Ed McCann. I'm the founder of Writers Read, and I'm your host for today's show on the theme of hair. We create memorable experiences for you, our guests, and our YouTube viewers, and for the writers whose work we feature, whether they are established or emerging, and whether published or not, because at Writers Read, it's all about craft and about a writer's ability to write and perform an engaging personal story. And the stories we feature on stage and in our podcast are a maximum of 650 words, and those 2 double-spaced pages translate to a 5-minute spoken word performance. And we're delighted to return again to City Winery's beautiful flagship location here on Manhattan's West Side to celebrate writers and writing and wine with all of you. So we launched Writers Read on Father's Day weekend in 2014, and this show is our first event of our 10th year. So this is a very special show. I am so proud of what a team of dedicated volunteers has built with me, and I am delighted to present the work of the fine writers whom you are about to meet. Now, there are 4 types of hair. We've got coily, curly, wavy, and straight. But no matter the character of our hair, or let's be fair, hairlessness, at every age we spend inordinate amounts of time, energy, money, worry, and pride in front of mirrors, styling or removing it, and that is just the hair on our heads. Several weeks ago, we asked writers to tell us a funny, sad, poignant, tragic, or embarrassing story about their hair, and you're about to hear their different takes on the topic. And 9 members of today's talented cast will be making their first trip to our stage today, and that's 70% of our roster for the 2 math majors here in the house. And that's an exciting development for us as we continue to grow our talent pool and grow our audience. So we're going to open Act 1 of our show today with Ivy Eisenberg. And by day, Ivy runs an IT and innovation shop. But when she removes her consultant's hat, she is a regular on the humor beat. On the page, Ivy's work appears in New York Magazine, Tablet, Next Avenue, and Narratively. On the stage, she's performed in more than 50 storytelling and comedy events, including PBS's Stories from the Stage, the Moth Story Slam, She Makes Me Laugh Comedy Festival, and Generation Women. She has also written and performed 2 solo shows, Loud, Large, and Funny, a musical about losing her job at age 56, and that would really be a laugh riot, I think. And You Would Cry Too, which is a show that mines her chubby, sweet, sad, but also funny childhood. Ivy lives in Westchester County, and it is her first trip to our Writers Read stage when she gives us the lowdown on an international romance with her story, Seducing the Swede. Please give a warm welcome to Ivy Eisenberg.
I'm sitting in a glass cubicle with a Swedish guy from Chicago. He has the most adorable blonde curly hair and light blue eyes. Surrounding us, outside the cubicle, are Hasidic Jews, men with long beards and dark suits, women with modest dresses and wigs. It's my first job after returning from graduate school in Pennsylvania. I'm 27 years old, a tech writer in this Brooklyn, New York computer firm. My cube mate, the Swede, with the gorgeous curly blonde hair, is the only non-Jewish guy in the place. And I, with unapologetically long, wavy, wanton, unwigged brown hair, am the only secular female Jew. And they've segregated us behind this glass. I'd been looking forward to finding a nice Jewish husband when I came back to New York. I did not mean this Jewish. The Swede's got all the signs of a type of guy who might hit on me. Smart, lanky, brooding, broke. Still, he keeps a pack of Winston cigarettes in his office drawer, and I've been itching to start smoking again, so we become friends. Friends with no benefits. On Friday afternoons, when the rest of the office goes home for Shabbat dinners of schmaltz and gribbenes, the Swede and I hit the town. We go to poetry readings. We find cheap eats downtown. And then on Saturday nights, I get all dolled up and troll the discos looking for a husband. On Mondays, we smoke Winstons and we trade success-failure stories about our weekend. But the holidays are coming. I'm unhitched. I'm lonely. I have a motto. If you can't shtup with the one you love, shtup the one you're with. So I decide that on Thanksgiving, I'm gonna seduce the Swede. I have a great scheme. I'll take him to my friend's house for Thanksgiving on Long Island, then crash at my parents' house. My parents are away. Bada bing, bada boom. We have to work on Thanksgiving. I pack my car with what I call my seduction duffel bag. Non-granny panties, a little nightshirt, sort of subtly sexy without being too frou-frou, and my birth control paraphernalia. Diaphragm, big tube of diaphragm cream. Oh yeah, that's how sexy I am. After work, we get to my car, only to discover that my car was broken into and my seduction duffel gone. Oh no, says the Swede. We have to report this to police. What got stolen? I'm thinking to myself, what got stolen? My only pair of non-granny panties. My last chance at getting laid before I turned 50. Eventually, we get to my friend's delicious dinner with our perfect house and family. And back at my parents' house, the Swede sleeps in the basement. Not an ounce of desire for me. Never had it. Don't know what I was thinking. No chance of betting this guy. As usual, I'm alone for the holidays. Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day. And I'm up to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day by this point. But in early March, my loins come alive again, and I have a new scheme. He's complaining he can't find anyone to cut his curly hair. And I say, I cut hair? It's a total lie. In fifth grade, I tried to cut my friend's sideburns and cut off her earlobe. Nevertheless, the Swede takes me up on my offer. And there he is in my apartment, all soaped up and shirtless, me massaging his head with shampoo while pressing my breasts against his back as I snip his hair with my craft scissors. This seduction works. Sort of. It takes him a week to figure out that I'm hitting on him. It takes him 4 years to propose to me. And then, 20 years after we're married, he decides, totally out of the blue, he's gonna convert to Judaism. What do you know? I found my Jewish husband.
David Masello, originally from Illinois, has been making his living as a writer and editor here in New York City since graduating college over 30 years ago. Starting out as a nonfiction book editor at Simon & Schuster, David then held several editorial positions at many magazines, including several that I can't help pointing out have had ampersands in the title. And so we went from travel and leisure to art and antiques to town and country. A widely published essayist, poet, and playwright, David's currently executive editor of Milieu, which is a magazine about interior design. His writing appears in the New York Times, Best American Essays, and numerous literary and art magazines. And though he's written 3 books about art and architecture, he still wonders when he will write the book that he was meant to. And don't we all wonder about that? In his essay, An Ode to a Lock of Keats's Hair, David offers us a kind of rhapsody to poetry, to art, and to the hidden treasures of New York City that any of us can discover if we just open our eyes and open our hearts. It is my pleasure to welcome back to our stage David Masello.
I've seen it in person and in photos, and I've read descriptions of John Keats's hair as a deep coppery auburn. Wavy more than curly, though lank and darkened following one of his fevered night sweats. A drawing by Keats's friend Joseph Severn reveals this state of the poet's hair. Misshapen, scraggly strands plastered to his forehead. While Keats, who died of consumption 200 plus years ago, at age 25, never made it to America, his brother did, roaming the still young nation. Keats had written and fantasized about visiting his brother in America. But Keats did make it here, to New York, in part. The Morgan Library holds in their collection 3 clippings of his hair, one cut days before he died in 1821. That bunching of hair secured with a black velvet ribbon assumes the shape of an almost perfect O that ends in a tail-like coil, the ends feathered with a flourish evocative of David Cassidy's coif circa 1970. The lock had been snipped by Severn, Keats's devoted friend who'd accompanied him to Rome, hoping that the warmer climate might cure him of his disease. While Keats lay in his deathbed in a room overlooking the Spanish Steps, Severn had leaned over the prostrate poet to cut the hair, a not uncommon memento that people once collected and sent to one another. A lock of hair was better than an autograph. I love that I live in a city where artifacts, such as locks of Keats's hair, are cataloged, climate-controlled, and treasured. Literary relics are my holy relics. A lock of hair bespeaks life. The color holds, maybe even its scent of musk beneath the glass. His strands appear soft and silky with a burnished luster and sufficient body to coil back on themselves. It is the hair of a handsome, buff young man. And regardless of one's sexual orientation, a young man is a beautiful creation. Keats did make it to America. He made it to my adopted hometown, where I've lived for 40 years following my arrival after the University of Michigan. Keats's self-abnegation that his, quote, name was writ in water has long been washed away as inaccurate, though the words endure in stone as an epitaph on his marker in a Roman cemetery, where he and Joseph Severn are buried together. My paperback edition of Selected Poems and Letters by John Keats from sophomore year in college contains blizzards of exclamation points in the margins and youthful declarations writ in big pen blue, including really nice simile, or is that a metaphor? And great verb. Keats wrote in his ode on seeing a lock of Milton's hair that the poet's bright hair and spirit never slumbers, but rolls about our ears forever and forever. I visited Keats's house on Wentworth Place in London last summer. Something about the spindles of the staircase and the thought that he strummed them as he descended every morning. So I played the wooden slats on my ascent and descent. And I gripped the banister, wondering if the whorls of his fingerprints might be fossilized on mahogany. And what is it about a room once occupied by someone young and famous, also beautiful, a helpful attribute, that imbues it with meaning beyond the furniture and wallpaper? I parted the draperies in his bedroom for a view to the plum tree under which he wrote an ode. The site brochure mentions the bedroom as where he learned of his tubercular fate, and that the fireplace mantel and surround are original. So to gaze into that fireless black void feels akin to looking into his eyes, his face. To see Keats's hair on display on Madison Avenue is both macabre and sensual. There's a necrophiliac whiff mingled with a sweet, sentient aliveness. I will continue to visit this corporeal part of Keats forever and forever, comforted that he resides in a city where I came years ago and have lived in for far more years than he was allotted in his life.
A recent graduate of Marist College, Margaret Roach is now working toward a master's in library and information science. And to that end, she also works in the evenings as a library assistant, where she is proud to say She has not once locked a patron in for the night, though there is still time for that. Margaret's recent writing reflects her wide-ranging interests, from robots to religion to TV and movies and musical theater. She lives and writes in the Hudson Valley with her 2 cats and many crochet projects, and her work has appeared in publications such as Bourbon Pen. In her story, Bangs, Margaret reveals how she believes a simple change in hairstyle will be the key to an exciting, possibly even transformative new life in and out of the library. Please say hello to writer Margaret Roach.
I've decided, after some careful consideration, that I will become a bangs person. I will be more than just a person with bangs, but rather a bangs person. There is a difference. A bangs person melds their hair into their identity. Bangs people are confident enough to pick a hairstyle that requires work. The fact that the forehead is covered creates an air of mystery. What could be under there? You'll never know if it's a third eye or a greasy forehead. Bangs people are the type of people who can smoke cigarettes in a bathtub while having a breakdown and look amazing while doing it. Bangs are not a statement, but rather an identity. Frankly, I am sick of my face. Over the past couple of years, I have been forced to look at my features in the tiny little frame of Zoom. It was never a habit to look in the mirror often, and now I'm too acquainted with my features. Reader, it is dire. The only color on my face comes from the persistent hot girl eczema on my eyelid. My face is round. It reminds me of old-timey drawings of the moon. It hangs over the tiny little Zoom window. I can see my pale little features and think of all the improvements that could be made. My forehead, bangless, loomed over them all. In the past, I have had bangs. They were terrible. They floated above my forehead like a guest at a party that was uninvited. Out of my many hairstyles, they were one of the worst. The failures of my bangs is because I wasn't a bangs person. This time will be different. Every morning, I will wake up and carefully style my beautiful bangs. As I go throughout my day, they will be perfect, even if the weather is windy or humid. The bangs will be the first thing that people use to describe me. My hair is long and straight. It does nothing. Bangs will give my hair a purpose. Over the past 2 years, I have not improved as a person. In fact, I'm worse. I've adopted the lifestyle of a housebound elderly person. My days are focused around my cat's schedule. I rarely leave the house, and my skin is slowly taking on the appearance of a lizard. If I don't do something now, it's all downhill from here. This is why I've decided to become a bangs person. Forget self-help or therapy. I will improve myself entirely through my hair. I will be able to run a mile without stopping, and my skin will be beautiful. All thanks to my bangs. I will be glorious, and I will have bangs. I know this to be a fact. Most of my life has been spent feeling like something is missing. As a child, I had presumed that I was the chosen one meant for greatness. There's something stirring in me that's waiting to awaken. In recent years, I thought it would be some great creative life waiting to be unlocked, or the romantic partner I would meet in my college years. At the age of 23, I have given up on both of these things. I am meant to be a bangs person. I think of how I will get up in the morning when I am a bangs person. I will simply wake up. My bangs will be there. I will move throughout the morning smiling. My teeth will be white in contrast to my bangs. I won't drink coffee, but I will drink water. I will talk to birds, and I will wear dresses like Zooey Deschanel. I will be a whole new person, and I think I'm okay with that.
Native New Yorker Jack O'Connell spends his days with his wife Margaret on Long Island, and there he counts his lucky stars, knowing that in his chosen profession, acting, he's among the few who work pretty consistently. Among the dozens of credits in film and TV are roles in Doubt, Big Night, Inside Llewyn Davis, Mad Men, Nurse Jackie, Vinyl, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and Kaleidoscope. Lately, he's been making the festival rounds in La Cura, a series dealing with Alzheimer's. In his story, Victor the Barber, Jack invites us along for a haircut, and in the process, he offers us entree into a gentler, less hurried time. Please give a very warm welcome back to Jack O'Connell.
Back in the 1950s, a well-groomed gentleman never looked like he needed a haircut or that he just had a haircut. Only his barber knew for sure. It's hard to find an old-school scissor master barber these days. Most live by the electric clipper. It's faster, and it does the job. Somewhat. Scissors are more of a personal touch. A waltz as opposed to a mambo. Which brings me to a painted sign in the window that says John's Barber Shop on 2nd Street out in Mineola on the island. Now, John, the original owner, sold the business to Victor back in the mid-1980s. But Victor never bothered to change the name on the sign. Why bother, he said. It's too expensive. And besides, if a customer comes back here a few times, I'll tell him my name is Victor. The shop had an old-world simplicity that I loved. Clean, but in dire need of a paint job. A worn-out section of the floor surrounded Vic's chair. Cash register that didn't register. There was a warm softness to his voice and smile as he wished me good morning. No backslapping or hugging. 3 barber chairs faced the mirror. Vic, he always worked alone, planted himself at the center chair. On the walls were framed photos of sports heroes that reflected another time. Mickey Mantle, Eddie Arcaro, Johnny Unitas, Joe Pepitone, Sugar Ray Robinson, plus a few photos of the Islanders from the early 80s, Stanley Cup years. A tall jar holding a few combs slightly submerged in an aqua-colored liquid stood on a shelf next to a bottle of witch hazel. The jar with the word sanitizer printed across the front has been a barbershop staple since as long as I can remember. My father's lilac vegetal shaving lotion that I would pat on my face before 8th grade dances stands on the shelf next to a bottle of Vitalis. A black shaving cream dispenser that spewed out a hot lather for shaving nape and sideburns was set next to a few open straight razors. A leather razor sharpening strap hung from one side of Vic's chair. A radio that looked like a cathedral, set to an AM oldie station, always seemed to be playing the Bee Gees or one of those old groups whenever I was there. Back in the day, Vic would open his shop at 8 a.m. I would try to get there before 9. He'd either have somebody in the chair already or be tending to his 2 lemon tree plants that stood in the window. When he was good and ready, he'd gracefully motion me up into his chair. A clean, home-laundered sheet would then come in for a soft landing from my neck down to my knees, followed by the gentle touch of a tissued collar around my neck. Vic called my haircut the Jack Dempsey look, short around the sides and back, and just thin out the top. "You'll take your hair to your grave," he would tell me. Oh, really? Thank you, Vic. While he worked away, he liked to reminisce about his days as a young man from Italy, plying his trade in a busy shop on Lexington Avenue near 86th Street. Said it was $1.50 for a haircut in those days, but those 50-cent tips would really add up. Those were the days, Jack. Prices were in harmony with the time. Around the holidays, he would always tell me the menu he and his wife would make for the Feast of the Seven Fishes on Christmas Eve. After 15 years of hearing it, I could recite it myself. Arriving at this classic barber shop in September of 22, there was a different sign on the window, closed. I stared in for a while, unspooling memories, furniture, fixtures, photos, all gone. The end of an era. A druggist came out from next door and said, Vic retired. The shop was sold. It's going to be demolished to make way for a new apartment house, just like the one across the street that eventually blocked the sun from his prized lemon trees. He was a gentleman, said the druggist. They don't make them like that anymore. How fortunate was I to be a patron of this old world trained tonsorial artist.
Debra Freed lives in Greenwich Village with her husband and just post-college twins, and she's very happy when she's reading, baking, or riding a bike on a boardwalk. She spent the past 25 years working in advertising as a creative director, and the work she's most proud of is the launch of Dove's award-winning Campaign for Real Beauty. In addition to widening the parameters of beauty, she's also done her part to widen America's hips and put baubles on its wrists with advertising for clients running the gamut from Hellmann's Mayonnaise to Tiffany & Company. Debra's writing has appeared in the New York Times, and she also has a newsletter on Substack where she writes about, quote, clothing and life, quote, but not in that order. Debra braids a pair of his and hers hair tails together in her essay, Falling, recounting how hair in every state, from limp to luxurious to lacking to back again, became a family affair. We're very happy to have her with us again today. Please give a warm welcome back to Debra Freed.
My hair is the one part of my body that's effortlessly thin. A change in season or medication, and poof, out it falls. When it's not thinning, it's doing its other favorite thing, frizzing. My hair can sense humidity a few states away. Minoxidil and keratin have changed that, but once a hair hater, always a hair hater. And I hate mine. That hatred is intensified when in my 30s, I start dating a man with good hair. I'm shocked when he doesn't understand my need for an umbrella on drizzly days. He uses drugstore shampoo, barely knows what conditioner is, yet his hair hangs straight and proud like a flag on the 4th of July. Despite my justified outrage, I fall in love with and marry him. We work, make dinner, have parties, become parts of each other's families, just like real married people. As life has its ups and downs, so does my hair. Phillips, on the other hand, only has ups. During our twins' first week of life, my hair looks like it's been to war. Phillips looks like it's been to the south of France. Through the stress of Wall Street, the loss of parents, the sprinkling in of grays, it remains thick, straight, impervious. Nothing ruffles that American flag hair until chemotherapy. At first, there are just a few, curved silver strands scattered across the dark slate of our bathroom floor, like a gang of parentheses gone wild. I wipe them up before he wakes. The next day, there are more, and by day 5, the parentheses have multiplied, spooning each other in orgy-like clumps. I grab wipes, swiping faster than a desperate online dater. I sit in our living room window seat each morning, relieved when he appears still looking like himself. But his good hair continues to congregate on the bathroom floor, and his part is becoming wider. I Swiffer the floors and lint roll the bedspread. One morning, the parentheses make me gasp. They're splayed everywhere, like a grammar convention gone mad. I mop twice, and when I sit down for coffee, there are silver swirls stuck to my feet. I text a friend. I'm scared he'll wake with no hair, I peck. Ugh, it happens fast, she answers. Balding for overachievers, I reply, without smiling. I drum my fingers, and then I bolt. As I walk, I wonder if he'll know that the "ran out for milk" I scribbled on a Post-it really means afraid to see you bald. The village is quiet. I pass a bar where we used to get boozy and flirty when we were dating, and a restaurant we stamped out of years later, arguing bitterly over something I couldn't remember now if you paid me. I stop in front of our old apartment building. The Juliet balcony is no longer planted with Philip's morning glories. I picture him smiling after returning from the farmer's market, his arms filled with fresh basil and baby flowers. When I click the door open, I hear his computer keys tapping. Normalcy, a good sign. My keys jangle on the entry table. The typing stops. I walk in and take a breath. His scalp is whiter than I expected. It happened, he says, touching his head sheepishly. You look good like this, I say. And we both know I'm lying, but we need lies. As I lean down to hug him, a lock of my hair falls onto his forehead, tickling his tender skin, making him flinch. I tuck it behind my ear, and between my fingers, I feel what has been there all along, the complete and utter luxury of having something dumb to complain about. Chemo finally ends, and Philip gets better, and his beautiful hair returns. And to this day, he never needs an umbrella when it drizzles, and I always do. And that is not a curse, it's a gift.
Ayelet Leibovitch is drawn to storytelling at every available opportunity. And this might be as a video editor, spinning hours of footage into short, punchy promos, or at home, where she entertains her increasingly skeptical 7-year-old with long conversations about stuffed animals. For her own stories and essays, Ayelet draws from her daily life in Brooklyn, where she lives with her partner, who, by the way, now doubles as her hairstylist. In her story, The Haircut, it will become clear why Ayelet now prefers his scissor wielding to the salon treatment. And for her first time on our stage, please welcome Ayelet Leibovitch.
Walking into the hipster barbershop, I thought I had it all figured out. When they asked if I'd like something to drink, I should have known things would fall apart. High-end establishments make me uncomfortable. This feeling is always amplified by the offer of drinks. The only reason I was even in the aggressively understated cool of nom de plume, the nom itself should have scared me away, was their one reasonably priced haircut option. I'd had too many long, chatty, elaborately executed ordeals that cost a fortune and left me looking fine. Usually, I walked out with the same hairdo I'd once received at a Supercuts from a part-time stylist and full-time Burning Man enthusiast. I needed a haircut, but I didn't want to pay the upscale Brooklyn rate. Thus, I strode into Nom de Plume to claim my $60 short, defined as cut below the ears to the hairline. "Hi, I have a 3:45 appointment," I greeted the receptionist. "Sure, something to drink?" Sigh. "No thanks." The small space was hopping. It had 4 cutting stations, all full except the one I'd shortly inhabit. So the receptionist continued, "We priced by length. You'd be long, since your hair is below your shoulders." Long? What the F? Long was $120. I'm getting a bob. Isn't that considered short? Nope. The hair length you walked in, not out with, determined the price. I didn't expect to pay that much, I mumbled, aware that the entire salon could hear. The woman did her job firmly, enforcing the policy. "If you don't take the appointment, it's a cancellation. You'll still be charged. $60 for no haircut, or $120 for one haircut." So much for beating the system. I'll stay. Sadly, I followed the waiting stylist to station 3. The guy seemed nice, but gave off a B-team vibe. He was a little jumpy and had been the only one available last minute that day. We discussed a short bob, then headed to the sink. During the shampoo, I stewed about the money. I decided if I was going to pay double, I might as well go big. Back at my seat, I asked if it was too late for a pixie. The stylist hesitated, then said no. After some phone scrolling, we chose a tightly cropped Halle Berry photograph for reference. That's when things really took a turn. Following a few strained pleasantries, the stylist proceeded to give me the worst haircut of my life, in slow motion. My hair got rounder and rounder. I began to look like Sophia, not Vergara, not Loren, the one from the Golden Girls. Finally, I had to ask, "You're gonna pull in the sides, right?" I swear he said, "It'll be like a mushroom." "You mean not like a mushroom?" I spluttered, "right?" "Like a bowl," was the alarming response. "You mean not like a bowl, right?" I again realized that my distress was on full display when the stylist next to us smirked. He didn't mean mushroom. My hairdresser grew deeply stressed. He couldn't get my hair right. I tried saying mohawk and tighter, but to no avail. When the cut was finally over, my hair didn't resemble a mushroom, but it also didn't resemble a decent haircut. The poor stylist showed me the mirror. "Yes, I see," I said. I did see. It looked terrible. That was it. Haircut over. The next client was waiting. As I got up, the stylist muttered, "That's a pixie cut." He repeated it twice, then moved on. I paid the astronomical amount, left a common decency tip, and was back on the street. Me and my huge puff of hair. I resembled a short tree that had wandered in from the set of the Lorax. This was appropriate. I'd been as ineffective in advocating for myself as the Lorax had been for the trees. I began my defeated walk home, hoping a friend who lived nearby could lend me a hat.
Writers Read is a nonprofit literary organization with a mission to create memorable experiences for our writers and guests with quality events like this one. And in a time when so much around us can feel negative and uncertain, gathering like this to share stories and fellowship and wine can feel like a real gift and something that nourishes us all. I'm proud of what we're building, and our all-volunteer team is working with me to scale up, to attract more writers, more followers, more listeners, and to make the words of these talented writers available to a wider audience. A portion of the tickets you purchase for today's show flows through to us from City Winery, but our primary funding comes from you, our friends and our donors, funds that help offset some of our basic operating costs. And I'm going to share some encouraging news with you. We did our year-end appeal, our annual year-end appeal, and I kind of randomly set a goal of, let's set a goal for $15,000, because last year we had done 10. We've just crested 17,000. So I'm very proud of all that, and many of the people who supported us are here in this room, and we also received significant support this year from the Nancy Friday Foundation. And the Nancy Friday Foundation's mission is to support organizations that promote writers. And I've thought a great deal about that, and also about our friends at the New York State Writers Institute, whose mission is all about recognizing the community of writers within the larger community. And that whole idea really resonated for me, because so many of the people in this room are writers, and those of you who are not writers are readers. And so we are all united in our interest and our passion around words, the spoken word, the written word, and nothing in my life has felt more like, these are my people, this is my tribe, and you are all here, and we're all united in our interest and our support of this. And so for me, for this being the first show of our 10th year, it's kind of a very big deal, and I'm just so grateful to all of you for being here and for your support. If you are enjoying today's show, you can help us grow, and your donations are an investment in our mission to take this whole thing to the next level. So please do consider a tax-deductible gift today, and any amount to help us get there. There is a scannable code on the back of your program that'll take you to the donation page on our website with options for credit card or PayPal. The other thing that you could do to really support us and to be an ambassador for what we do is don't leave your program behind. Take it with you and share it with one writer in your life to sort of spread the news and spread the word about what we're doing with the spoken word. It's very exciting when we see submissions from people we haven't heard from before. We wonder how they've heard about us. But we're just so pleased with the support we've got, and for the encouragement that we get, because we simply can't do what we're doing without you. So I thank you. And we're going to pause here for a short break of exactly 15 minutes in which our servers can take your food orders. And when you hear this bell, and many of you who've been here before know this bell, this is the bell I grew up with. My mother called us, I'm the youngest of 6, my mother called us to dinner with this bell. And I keep it in the equipment case to call you all back to your seats. So when you hear that bell, come back for a great second half and more great stories. I'm Eamonn McKay. This is Writers Read. Thank you. Well, thank you. Welcome back to the second half of our show. And before we bring up the next writer, I want to thank all the people who make this live event here at City Winery possible, from the folks here in the house like Aiden on audio and our servers. I'm grateful for my partner and Writers Read executive producer Richard Kolath, to our editors David Masello, Lisa Donati-Mayer, and Rhonda Zangwill. And to the new president of our board of trustees, let's give it up for Sarah Caldwell. This is a big change, and for the last 10 years, we've been operating as kind of an informal kitchen table advisory team, and we are now a real board of trustees, and it's a really exciting moment. There's a lot of talent that has come on board to work to take this to the next level. We are defining what the next level means, but it's really special that you're all here. The other thing I just want to share very briefly, and kind of an origin story, that 10 years ago, when I decided I wanted to kind of create the sort of reading that I would want to attend, which was the opposite of the sort of open mic from hell format, which is, it can be very inconsistent, and then there's some good things, there's some gems, and there's also moments when you're like, how do we make it stop, And so I had this idea to create a curated, really quality experience. I wanted to make it a great experience for both the writers, the talent in the room, as well as the folks attending. And from that very first show on Father's Day weekend in 2014, my partner Richard and I, he had fresh flowers in the ladies' room, we had wine and cheese, we had all kinds of things. But what we didn't have in that first year was any kind of submission mechanism. We had we didn't have a website yet, we were brand new. And so we were launching on Father's Day weekend, 2014. And so Steve Lewis and we reached out to the writers we knew to sort of say, hey, we're doing this thing. It's Father's Day weekend. We need a story themed about fathers or fatherhood or fathering. And I also searched my own contact list for keyword just writers. And I'm like, oh yeah, that person. I reached out to a bunch. And there was a name I didn't recognize, but I had recorded it because it mattered. I'm like, I'm going to need this name and number, this email later. Let me put this in here. And I reached out to a woman named Suzanne McConnell, who is here in the house tonight. As best as we can both figure, we've discussed this many times, I believe that I peeled her phone number off a flyer that was stapled on a telephone pole about writing workshops or something. I took this number and thought, I'm going to need this later. So I held on to this. And I reached out to Suzanne, who turned out to be the editor of the Bellevue Literary Review, among other things. And she was part of our very first show that Father's Day weekend 10 years ago, as was Charles Hale, who I think may be here in the house tonight. I haven't seen Charles yet, as was David Masello. But it was a very special thing to have these people come together, many of whom were meeting for the very first time, and to sort of just come together as a cast, and just the support, the energy around that. And from that first show in a 65-seat house in a rented theater on West 23rd Street, right out of the gate, this was a successful model. People wanted to know, when is the next one? So we have grown in interesting ways. And now with City Winery as our venue partner, we have kind of hit a nice rhythm, and this is a wonderful room, and we're building audience here. And I'm just really so grateful to be here with all of you, and I thank you for your support. And it's been an interesting, here's to the next 10 years. So, Khaholi Bailey opens Act 2 of our show about hair this afternoon, and Khaholi says she would rather write than talk about her life, preferably to those who will pay for her stories. And despite that, she's agreed to be here with us today anyway. So in addition to being a writer, she is also a mother, a sister, a reader, a middle child, and not least, a Capricorn. Her work has appeared in a number of journals, including Catapult, Breadcrumbs, Midnight and Indigo, and Flapper House. She also has the distinction that I'm betting is a first here for the Writers Read family. Some of her lifestyle articles have been translated into Mandarin, although she's quick to point out that she cannot read them. Khaholi lives here in New York City, and her first book, Miseducation of a 90s Baby, is due out this year. In her essay, Baby's First Relaxer, she tells us about a rite of passage that is transformative in ways she never imagined. For her first appearance on the Writers Read stage, please join me in welcoming Khaholi Bailey.
Before the relaxer, Ma would unravel my braids, lay me on the kitchen counter, wash, then rebraid my hair to look like the inner workings of a kaleidoscope. The everyday geometric shapes on my scalp were more fitting for a celebration, like the return of a sun god or the merging of two kingdoms. At least the white girls in third grade saw it that way, always tracing their eyes along the primordial design. But by fourth grade, something changed. It became clear to me that my classmate, Roxy, with her long mermaid waves, was destined to rack up on that in-class delivery of carnations every Valentine's Day. Danielle, the new girl with a slack jaw and stiff braids, was destined to pretend she has a super hot boyfriend that happens to live in another town. Roxy leaned over our lunch table to demonstrate their differences. Her smile was wide and bright, save for the gaps of missing teeth that mirrored the sliver of space between being an unbridled kid and being a pure asshole. She wound her hand back and slapped one of Danielle's braids. It was the kind of chunky braids that started with the ball barrette and ended at the clip barrette. They looked like cojones. Exactly. The other Puerto Rican girls laughed first. The black girls looked around and laughed later. Maybe it meant shit. Either way, it was time to straighten my hair, and it could not come a moment sooner. My older sister, Layla, was the first to get a relaxer. She walked in the front door one morning with a bobbed haircut, curled and styled like a middle-aged woman who slept in plastic rollers. I hovered my hands around her hair, knowing instinctively not to touch it. "How does it feel?" I asked. She said the weight of her hair was gone. When it was my turn, I could feel water running down my scalp for the very first time. The water tickled, and I felt a bit open, probably from the small abrasions dotted along my hairline. The relaxer felt like minuscule whips, separating my scalp from itself, leaving scabs that will become something new. The weight of my hair had literally been lifted. I felt bald, except for the fringe of hair tickling my cheeks and on my shoulders. My hair didn't seem like a part of me. I walked into that salon a little girl, but left with a switch in my hips, a bad little bitch. After the relaxer, the white girls who were awestruck by my cornrows were now replaced by other black girls lining up to call what was now my good hair. My classmate and fellow relaxee, Tiffany, tugged out a handball-sized tuft of hair. She wore an expression of guilty horror, which met my practiced, nonchalant face. Does this usually happen? Tiffany looked at the brush as she would a bloodied knife. This doesn't happen to you, I thought. In no time, all that bang blowing and hair flipping left behind a trail of thin and crunchy strands on my shoulders. Eventually, parting my hair to the side revealed a scalp-bearing wedge like that of a 60-year-old man. We realized relaxers were not necessarily lower maintenance than braids. It required moisture and hair wrapping, which is brushing the hair out and then around the curvature of your skull, all while smoothing it with bobbykins, a feat of psychomotor coordination I'd never cared to master. The weight of my hair had been lifted, though the weight of conformity was more present. It was best to be adored in the right way, that is, straightforward and typical, not in a curling fashion that brought me back to the same place, longing. I lamented through adolescence, not yet knowing that the sun gods still lurked, raising the inevitability of me. The chemicals could not stop my strands from going upward like leaves toward the sunlight.
Eamonn McKay was born in North Belfast, Northern Ireland, at the very start of the 30-year period known as the Troubles. Eamonn's eyewitness experiences sparked in him a deep awareness of how trauma affects individuals in the midst of civil war. He trained as a therapist at the University of Ulster and put his skills to work for the Northern Ireland Prison Service, where he worked with prison guards who were sometimes seen by the prison population as complicit in the terror of that time. Eamonn moved to the States in 2003, continued his therapeutic training in California, and now practices in Pennsylvania. This is also Eamonn's first trip to our stage, and incidentally, he wins today's longest commute award, having traveled here from his home in Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania, about 3 hours to the west. In his story, he paints a beautiful portrait of a cherished family tradition, and we're delighted that he's here. Please give a warm first welcome to Eamonn McKay.
Give them the usual, Arthur. Nice and short, my father would cackle. A good army cut. That'll make men of them, he beamed. Our Uncle Arthur would squeeze his arthritis-addled finger and thumb into a pair of old, blunt scissors, then position us in a high chair in his kitchen, him listening to the horse racing, the commentary carrying from the TV in the living room. Aye, Arthur, this race will be a good one. Going's a bit rough there, but this one here they're talking about, he loves a bit of muck in his eye. Does he? My dad might have had a shilling or two on it then. Aye, he would. As the two men spoke, and as his arthritis racked Uncle Arthur's fingers, he contorted us, his hands, and his body to get for himself the best chance at a decent cut. He stood back often, came at us from some acute angle. He pounced in moments. He swapped scissors for clippers and clippers for scissors, and the steel comb from one hand to the other. He grunted, shuffled, celebrated wins on the horses, lamented losses. He trimmed, scalped vigorously, and squinted more so. Arthritis played merry havoc with his hips also, and as he circled us, he rolled from side to side, like a heavy ship moored up and fighting a swell. Uncle Arthur wore the grey or black trousers and the old shirts and thick sweaters of a countryman, and I could see my dad in him. I could see in him my dad in 20 years' time, and I was disappointed. But our old Uncle Arthur seemed happy, this gnarled, clumsy countryman without a straight bone in his body. Both men seemed content in their own ways. They said "I" a lot, these men, starting their sentences with the word, finishing their sentences with the word, throwing it in there for good measure. It was also, I realized, some unconscious expression of resignation. Aye, there's a race today at Cheltenham at 3 this afternoon, if you can believe the newspaper out there. Aye, I can see that here, sighed my dad. The going's good to firm. Oh, aye, sighed the old uncle. Aye, that's a bit of a blow to your bet there then, so it is. My father liked the going on tracks like this, so he did. Aye, he did. God rest him. Aye, aye, God rest him. By this time in my life, the Irish folk I knew had tired of futility in many domains, and I, when sighed deeply, often was the extent of rebellion offered. It gasped every emotion from hatred to disapproval, sadness to despair. It belied the weakness of this Northern Irish Catholic population, these gnarled men and their gnarled women. Uncle Arthur's kitchen was thick with the smell of bread cooling, heady and comforting, and after cutting our hairs, he would treat us to thick slices of bread stacked high with strawberry jam. Washed down with lemonade from the supply kept in his indoor lavatory. The bottles in crates stacked right beside the toilet, under a frosted window rusted closed years before. Paint eased from the walls in bubbles the size of a boy's hand. The spider webs sealing the windows were white, brittle, and the flies circling the toilet hopscotched from there to the lemonade bottles with impunity. Rarely did we stagger away from Uncle Arthur's with a straight fringe. He dispatched us with fierce slopes running from one side of our heads to the other, all too obvious in the photos of the time. Dad paid handsomely, with trout or with rabbit. That'll do you boys for the next wee while, he would say, handing over a bloodied catch. There you go, Arthur. Good colour in that trout. Aye, that there is. There'll be some good eating in non-fish too. Aye, that there will. And in unison, to close this moment, a final and heavy aye.
Zach Buckner is another Writers Read first-timer, a copywriter and humor writer who splits his time between Brooklyn and Barryville, New York. If Zach had his way, instead of working, he'd spend most of his time up on his 2 feet, walking every and anywhere they would take him, interborough, interstate, even internationally. Along the way, he'd be on the lookout for dumplings, he says, and stray cats to feed, but not the dumplings. Those would be for him. Zach is one of 5 siblings, and he cried during his bar mitzvah when the rabbi confirmed he suffered from a classic case of middle child syndrome. He's proud to have grown up in northern, repeat, northern, not southern Westchester. And in his story, Shalom to All That, Zach brings us along on a journey of acceptance, denial, more acceptance, and hair, more or less, or rather more and less. Please say hello to Zach Buckner.
Every morning, I wake with a tinge of disappointment. I'm not saying my life is a disappointment, or I'm jumping off the Goethals Bridge between meetings, or anything like that. But every morning for 32 years, I've woken with disappointment over my body. When I was 16, I'd stare at my protruding stomach, the sweat already starting at 7 a.m., and my dirty blonde Jewish curls. I did the same at 21 and 25, 28. I didn't think I could shave away my Jewishness and my insecurities by buzzing my curly locks, but I did not think it either. The decision came to me after being mistaken for Abraham on Fordham's campus. Who's Abraham? I have no idea. When I asked the student, she just said, "He looks like you." Stammering, schwitzing, a little paunchy. Was Abe also wearing an 80s Bob Dylan t-shirt, perhaps? Shortly after the Abraham incident, I was like Moses and parted the curls of my hair and shaved my head. But your hair is your thing, my friend said with a buzzer humming in one hand and a PBR in the other. With each buzz, a piece of me floated away. Bzzz. Goodbye, complicated relationships with food and digestive issues. Bzzz. Sayonara, my mother's fear of choking on burgers, balloons, and saliva. Bzzz. Shalom to all of that. When my friend finished, I barely recognized myself. First, I didn't know that I had bumps on my head. Instinctively, I called my mom, and before I could get a word out, she asked, "What's wrong?" Now we were both terrified of the bumps. Our shared Jewish panic told us that, sure, on the one hand, it could be the natural shape of my skull. But far more likely, it was a malignant tumor that spread to 3 different parts of my brain. Second, I couldn't tell if I was balding or not. Was my hairline always pushed back? They say your hairline can be linked to your maternal grandfather. Since I already informed my mom she'd have one fewer son in the very near future, I decided to ask my aunt about my grandfather's hairline. What's it matter if he was bald? He owned a business, my aunt said. He was a good man, depressed, sure, always disappointed too. Anyways, you shouldn't be worried about losing your hair. You should be worried about getting diabetes. That's what killed him. Not a widow's peak. He made your grandmother a widow. Third, I had a serious glower on my face. Gone was the open-armed invitation to kvetch about bowel troubles, good meals, or the minor annoyances fueling our days. Instead, I looked like I wanted to talk about lawn maintenance or golden retrievers. Over the next few years, I lived by the Garfunkel principle. Did I look like I could be a stand-in for Art Garfunkel? If so, parsley, sage, rosemary, and time for a buzz. It wasn't until later that I realized my hair was the only thing I truly ever loved about myself. After a lifetime of body hatred, my hair stood out on a body that wanted to fade in. My hair became a blanket I wanted to either wrap around myself or throw in the fire, or often do both at the same time. People envied, gushed, fawned over my hair. But when I tried to offer myself that same love and acceptance, I buzzed it away. I couldn't face my own face. With each buzz, I thought I was staring the world down and shouting, "What do you think of me now?" I was really only shouting at myself, of course. I woke up today without my morning disappointment. I've come to love my curls, my Jewishness, my body. I've even come to love the bumps on my head, which I make doctors check annually and thoroughly, just to be safe.
Until she retired, Daphne Gregory-Thomas spent more than 4 decades as an educator in New Jersey and here in New York City. She specialized in helping students both with and without disabilities as they prepared for life after high school. Daphne's award-winning internship programs offered her students strategies to advocate for themselves and pursue satisfying careers. Her own journey as a writer progressed from on-the-job report writing to something much more personal when she became a patient at Memorial Sloan Kettering. With the support of MSK's Visible Ink writing program, Daphne discovered a new writing heartbeat, and she's published her essays in the Visible Ink anthology and performed them at its annual event. She's currently at work in a memoir, and in her essay, The Look, Daphne explains how hair, both its absence and its abundance, have unexpected transformative powers. I'm so pleased to welcome to our stage for the first time, Daphne Gregory-Thomas.
I've always had bad hair. That legacy comes from my father, who didn't have much hair at all. He claimed he lost it early on because his brain got bigger when he went to college. Baldness being the only downside of his extraordinary intellectual growth. He was a Greek patriarch whose family came from a small village at the base of Mount Olympus, descendants, he would claim, of the gods. I had not inherited the brilliance to be bald, but instead limp, thin tresses, and the curse of cutting, curling, coloring, braiding, setting, all in vain. When it came to my head, the gods did not have me in mind. Then a day came when a very good doctor told me that I would have to undergo harsh chemotherapy treatments if I wanted to live. I asked if I would lose my hair. She looked at me solemnly and said, "I'm afraid so." Thinking I would be devastated, she offered me a prescription to get a wig, trying to soften the blow. Wigs can be very expensive. Under these circumstances, I can give you a prescription to pay for it. I tucked it away, anticipating I would use it when the time came, that it might be a great improvement over my bad hair history, the years of trying to keep up with the latest fads and trends at the salon with my paltry locks. For so long, in spite of trying everything, cutting it short, growing it long, perming it, hot ironing it, rolling it up in beer cans, nothing had ever worked. Bobby pins, barrettes, hair bands, all useless, sliding from place like laughter at my attempts to manage the mess on top. What the good doctor did not know was that she had given me a silver lining in the dark cloud of diagnosis and treatment that loomed over my stringy-haired head. In the not-too-distant future, I wouldn't have to contend with the fruitless routines of chasing down some version of a crowning glory. I now had a prescription in hand for a wig of my choosing, requiring no more work than putting it on and taking it off, covered by insurance to boot. When my hair began to fall out, I decided to just shave all the rest off so I didn't find strands and clumps all over the house. Besides, I could then hurry to get my fancy new free wig. The day I went to shave off whatever hair I had left, the hairdresser who buzzed me commented, "Nice head, great shape, perfect for this look." Perhaps she was being kind given my obvious circumstance, but I took her at her word. "Look," I said aloud, "finally, I have a look." And this time, I was told the look was perfect. Fate brought me a moment when a hairdresser didn't have to struggle with diplomacy to convince me that a cut, curl, or color provided something more than just okay. I wondered if the gods of my ancestral village at the base of Mount Olympus were finally smiling down on me, just when I needed them the most. With that, I decided not to get my fancy free wig. I treated myself instead to a great pair of earrings after each chemo treatment, celebrating my new look, that of a cool hipster with a perfect bald head and funky earrings. Then a funny thing happened. My hair grew back, and it was a game changer. No longer thin and limp, I was blessed with a thick, dark mass filled with silver streaks. "Where do you get your hair done? I love the color," admirers asked. To which I confidently answered, "Oh, you have to go to my oncologist for this mix." Months later, when I visited my good doctor for a follow-up, I thanked her for putting me on the path of healing. I also thanked her for providing me with a treatment plan that gave me a new look. Admired by all, no wig required. Don't be surprised if you get a few phone calls asking for the look, I warned her. She smiled and answered, perfect. And at that moment, I finally thanked the gods.
Jessica Lunetta Weer lives in Central Jersey with her husband Lance and their rescued bulldogs Lilo and Stitch. She's a graduate of Harvard University Extension School's Creative Writing and Literature MLA program, and she's completed 2 manuscripts, both novels, that she is now launching on their quest for a wider audience. That is, shopping them around. In addition to reading and writing, Jessica also spends her time baking homemade croissants, taking Italian, watching old movies, golfing, playing music, both piano and violin. And in her tale, The Duck's Ass, Jessica offers us 3 generations of the women in her family, as different and connected as their chosen hairdos. Please welcome to our stage, for the first time, Jessica Weer.
The flip bob, the bouffant, the beehive, the duck's ass. Only a few of the hairstyles my Gram rotated through week by week when she was younger, visiting the hair salon more often than most people see their therapists. She was chic. She was always done up, whether it was for sitting by the pool or going to her job as a switchboard operator at Bell Telephone. She made her own clothes, which at the time was considered fashionable, not frugal. Today, at 90 years old, lace and silk, curling and teasing, purple shadows and pink paints all remain part of her vocabulary and her hairstyle. My mother, Graham's only child, has had the same hairstyle for the last 30 years. A shoulder-length cut treated with box dye every 6 weeks. In the 70s, she was a hippie with her hair down to her waist. And then the 80s brought her 10 years of frying her hair into curly submission. Her style is practical, not fashionable. T-shirt and jeans day in and day out. Not me. From the time the first Delia's catalog was delivered to my mailbox, I have been a fashionista like my grandmother, a brand whore, a slave to trends, willing to mortgage my house for a chance at a Birkin bag. That's me. But my hair is the one place my kindred spirit grandmother and I have never been able to agree. My asymmetrical two-tone hair confuses Gram, leading her to reference the duck's ass time and time again when she can't think of anything else to say, though my hair is anything like the tight twist of the duck's ass updo, and even less like the popular men's haircut of the 50s, the ducktail. The hair on the left side of my head flows freely and punk rockerly, while the right is closely shaven. I've had purple highlights, bright blonde with dark eyebrows, bangs with Rory Gilmore vibes, bobs and ombre and undercutting. My very first salon visit was in the late 90s. I was in the 8th grade and wanted to stand out amongst the messy buns and high ponytails of my classmates. Without social media or the internet as we know it to research the best place to get the hairstyle of my dreams, a real G.I. Jane look of sexy short hair which simultaneously spelled out that I meant business, I went to my local hair salon and walked out with a pixie which exposed my neck and made me feel completely new. But in reality, put me closer to the look of my brother's quarterly buzz cuts the day before my mom would run the clippers through. Gram, with her teased out ash blonde hair, came over after my cut and blinked alien-eyes at me, unable to hide her confusion at my choice. "Oh," she said, sweetly, because every word ever spoken by Gram, whether vile or kind, is spoken with sugar dripping. "You cut your hair." "Yup," I nodded, the self-conscious 13-year-old in me not too concerned about what Gram thought, but still wondering what she'd say. "Well," she said, tilting her head, a housewife smile plastered on her face, "it'll grow back." She didn't motivate me to grow my hair out that day, nor did she prompt a rebellion of shortcuts only. But she did show me something, which today has brought a barrier between us. Her opinion was the only opinion. My hair hasn't changed much in the past 10 years. I found what works for me, and I play around with it each time I see my hairdresser. When I get compliments, and I often do, I cherish them. Because on the flip side of these compliments is Graham, who every time she sees me will say, "Don't you miss your long hair?" And then say, "Did I ever tell you about the duck's ass?"
Rhonda Zangwill has long lived a literary life, writing, editing, and teaching. Over the years, she has rabble-roused for New York Writers Coalition, Teachers and Writers Collaborative, Girls Write Now, and that's Girls Write with a W, Girls Write Now, the Penn Prison Program, and The Moth. She now runs writing workshops for the Educational Alliance and Leibovitch Senior Center, and her published work, both print and pixelated, can be found in a motley bunch of places, including Calyx, the Arcade of the Scribes, Common Unity, and the Boston Globe. To her shock and delight, a story that appears in the Rainbow Project was recently nominated for a Pushcart Prize, and that is a certifiable big deal. Rhonda reads around town, including at the National Arts Club, the New York City Poetry Festival, the New York Public Library, and in some of the East Village's most charming community gardens. In her essay, Silver Lining, she embraces her proclivity for rebellion using a strategy that was completely unexpected, but not unwelcome. Please give a warm welcome and Pushcart Prize nomination congratulations to Rhonda Zangwill.
My head once sported long, thick hunks of many-colored hairs. Thanks to my mother, the base was deep brown. My father, not to be outdone, contributed his own genetic calling card, red highlights. He once featured his own carrot top in a pompadour of dizzying height. Biology added to this mix a smattering of blonde wisps and even occasional flashes of white if the sun was at just the right angle. The result, most agreed, was that I had quite a good head of hair. Obviously, I take zero credit for this. It was strictly the result of heredity, like a talent for acrostics or an extra pinky toe. I was barely past 40 when the grays sprouted, and not in that hip Susan Sontag, I am an intellectual, white stripe kind of way. Mine was much more Wicked Witch of the West. But did I grumble and complain? Did I surreptitiously pick individual wiry strands from my scalp? Did I flout my foremother's disdain for hair dye and run for the Lady Clairol? I did not. No, if anything, just the opposite. It was inadvertent at first. My beau and I were looking forward to that year's Clearwater Music Festival, and the ladies selling us the tickets asked him, then aged 55, if he wanted the senior price. He did. They were a good 40% cheaper. I, more than a decade his junior, smiled up at her and said kiddingly, "What about me? Can I have a senior ticket too?" She eyed me suspiciously, and then with a conspiratorial wink, she said, "Honey, if you want to call yourself a senior, I will sell you that ticket." Pete Seeger never sounded so good. Then it happened again. We were off to take ballroom dancing at the Riverdale Community Center. 10 classes, $200, over 55, you get a 20% discount. The registrar didn't even blink when I checked off the senior box. Afterwards, with Love Is Here to Stay swirling in our heads, we foxtrotted our way down to the local Italian joint and spent our savings on grilled calamari. After we split up, I figured that without him as cover, my little ruse would have to come to an end. But no. my abundant gray continued to offer me completely unexpected entree to a whole new world. I learned that seniors have special days at the grocery store, the drugstore, even the phone store, all clamoring for my discounted dollars. I was dumbfounded, but also emboldened, and no one ever questioned me, not once. Not the young girl at the Cinema Village movie theater, despite a huge sign demanding that seniors show proof of age, or even the not-so-young ticket sellers at Penn Station, and not just New Jersey Transit, Amtrak too. Not a single museum staffer ever balked at my "senior ticket, please" request. It was all such a lark in the beginning, but then it dawned on me. This was something more. This was revolutionary. Hair as subversion. You know that offensive old canard about little old gray-haired ladies and their alleged dottiness? That was my secret weapon. I was flipping the script on ageism and making it pay. Who knew that my hair would be my ticket to rebellion against our youth-obsessed culture? So, I was having a pretty good time while all of this lasted, but eventually I aged out, or rather aged in. I now legitimately qualify for every AARP discount. But my hair was not done with me. Grown way out and even grayer during the pandemic, it was still my defining feature. Well, that and my bicycle, a vintage 1970s Huffy, 1-speed, bright blue fenders, a large wicker basket. It was my main pandemic transport, all that wind and sun, and was a perfect antidote to the lurking COVID germs. And what a joy to fly down those empty avenues that offered respite as well to walkers and joggers and small massed groups in their little people pods. All of us desperate to get out of the house and craving human contact. Every now and then, as I pedaled by, at a safe social distance, of course, I'd hear, "Look, there's the Wicked Witch. Hey, what'd you do with Dorothy? Where's Toto?" And then they start to chant, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And I just smile, happy to play along and channel another fictitious elder, all the while reveling in the feel of my long silver locks flying out behind me.
Somehow I'm reminded, and Nora Ephron once said in an interview that she thought that the greatest invention of the 20th century was hair dye for women, because their grandmothers had two choices, pink and blue. That was it. Brad Mislow's first taste of the literary life came when he published a letter to the editor of Rolling Stone while he was still a junior in high school. This led to more letters and more publications that he parlayed into staff writing and editorial positions at student newspapers at the universities of both Florida and Georgia. Eventually, he hung his hat at a few big-time advertising agencies, and now, in addition to his independent work, Brad writes humor pieces for the Jewish Review of Books, tends to his many followers on social media, and performed an original essay and a national appearance on CBS Sunday Morning. He currently lives in the Bronx with 2 adult children and a lovable pit bull mix, Rosie, and in his first trip to our stage, he will close our show with his essay, Baby Got Back Hair, in which he discusses that immortal question, to shave or not to shave. Please give a very warm welcome, first-time welcome, to Brad Mislow. Slow.
I have back hair. A lot. From my neck on down. My father had it, so did my grandfathers, uncles, and male cousins. Back hair is a strong genetic trait among Ashkenazi Jewish men. Look, Eastern Europe is cold. And who knows how many times my ancestors had to flee in the dead of winter from hordes of anti-Semites during pogrom season. Evolution decided that warmth meant survival. Thus, hair sprouted on our backs, and I am here to tell the tale. Since I grew up around so much body hair, I never thought anything of it. My father was a bald, well-built man with a tremendous amount of blonde body hair. He never was self-conscious and had no shame going shirtless. As my back gradually got hairier in my 20s, I never considered grooming. However, I did opt to swim with a t-shirt. One time at Jones Beach, a very hairy man walked past me, and some nearby drunk 20-something started making Wookiee noises. My shirt stayed on. Let's face it, back hair has no sex appeal. You don't see Hollywood A-listers flashing their hairy backs on screen. Hairy men in movies are mocked or made to seem ape-like, and they never end up getting the girl. I mean, every time they remake King Kong, he dies. So, one very hot summer day, I made an appointment to get this hair cut at a neighborhood salon with a woman named Annie. She was Albanian American and grew up in the Bronx. She was about my age and kind of cute. She regularly shaved the hair in the back of my neck as part of her service. On this hot summer day, she pulled my shirt collar and peeked down. She said, "Come with me to the back room. Let's make you feel better." This was all starting to sound like the opening lines of countless pornographic movies, but I was married at the time and there were other customers around, so yeah. I followed her into a darkly lit back room where there was a massage table and other spa accessories. Total change of vibe. "Take off your shirts," he said. Okay, now I'm starting to wonder where this is headed. I'm staring face to face with Annie. I'm shirtless. She's dressed. "Turn around," she said. I hear the click and hum of her shears, which begin to glide down my back. I'm getting shorn like a sheep. Annie said she did this for her brothers growing up, and it was not a big deal. "You're going to feel so much cooler." She continued until my back was smooth and hairless. I looked at the mirror and saw freckles I haven't seen in decades. She rubbed in some cooling lotion and instructed me to put my shirt back on. It was weird. I could actually feel the shirt on my back. I looked on the floor, and there was the pile of all the shorn hair. She swept it up, and it filled an entire dustpan. She held up the shears. "Do you have one of these at home? I recommend one." I learned later this was a one-time deal. All further shearings would have to be done on my own, which involves a lot of bodily contortions and thorough sweeping. Was it worth it? I decided in the long run, it wasn't. It's not like I'm going to be a male model or a lifeguard or some other profession which involves long periods of shirtlessness. So why bother? Who was I trying to impress? But here's how I really made peace with it. In the dating pool, especially among middle-aged women who prefer Jewish men, back hair is a non-issue. In fact, they like it. Or they just like me and decided it's just part of the whole package. And that makes sense because like most gifts, I come fully wrapped.
Will all the writers come back up here on stage? You know, we built Writers Read around performances like this one. And I'm so proud to be here with this group of fine writers, and again, proud of what a very small group of committed, unpaid volunteers has accomplished and continues to build with me. I'm very thankful to our venue partner, City Winery, and to all of you for our support of our efforts here today. There are lots of moving parts to this organization. We have recently transitioned, as I may have mentioned, from an advisory team, an informal team, to actually a board of trustees. And we have room and we have need for volunteer committee or board members to help us steer it, and most especially in the areas of finance and fundraising. We've got editorial covered, we've got marketing is heating up really in a nice way, but finance and fundraising, we definitely, I don't know who those people are. Are they here in this room? Where do they exist? I don't know. Where are they? But if you're interested, let's please talk, and know that you can always reach me with thoughts or suggestions via email, ed@writersread.org. Now, I know that none of us want more email, but at the bottom of every page on our website, there's an opportunity to sign up for our newsletter, which, you know, happens, let's say, twice a month, but it will keep you abreast of submission deadlines and of live events and things that we're doing, and it will allow us to stay in touch. And one of the things I've realized after years of, like, you know, trying to crack the code of social media, that the people who sign up for our newsletters, who actually want to hear from us and want our information, We have an incredibly robust open rate of the emails that we send out, and that is the primary way that we stay in touch with our community. So I would encourage you to do that. Please do take your program with you. Please tell your friends about us, and please consider a charitable and tax-deductible gift to Writers Read to help us grow. We can't do what we do without you. So this round of applause from us is for all of you. Please don't rush off while there is wine to drink and people to meet. And please do join us in the gallery for a reception. We're going to be there hanging out and talking and schmoozing for an hour. But now we're going to do something that we have not yet done ever before. We're going to bow. Hold on. Come on. Come on, everybody.
I realized for the first time
Are we ready?